Workplaces are meant to be safe, but sometimes they become the site of unimaginable tragedy. In this video, we'll look at 5 more real stories of the most disturbing workplace deaths, events that shocked industries and left lasting scars. It was December 2nd, 1984, in Bhopal, India. The city was quiet, with most people asleep, unaware of the disaster about to unfold. At the Union Carbide India Limited pesticide plant, a serious failure was set in motion. The factory used a dangerous chemical called methyl isocyanate, or MIC, to make pesticides, but safety measures at the facility were poor. Just before midnight, a deadly gas leak began. A storage tank containing MIC ruptured due to a chemical reaction caused by water entering through a corroded pipe. The reaction created intense heat and pressure, forcing toxic gas into the air. The plant's safety systems were either broken or deliberately turned off to save money, allowing the gas to spread quickly. Within minutes, a thick cloud of poison covered Bhopal, seeping into homes and filling the streets. Thousands of residents, unaware of the danger, were exposed as they slept. Many woke up coughing violently, their eyes and throats burning. The air was toxic, making it almost impossible to breathe. Aziza Sultan, a survivor, recalled hearing her baby cough uncontrollably before realizing their house was filled with gas. Panic set in, and people rushed outside, only to be met with more fumes. Some collapsed, unable to breathe. Others, blinded by the gas, ran in confusion, getting trapped in the chaos. Families were separated, and many never saw their loved ones again. The effects were devastating. Thousands of people lost their lives within hours due to exposure. Many suffocated, while others experienced severe convulsions and organ failure. In the panic to escape, crowds trampled over one another in the dark, adding to the tragedy. By morning, Bhopal was a city of grief. The official death toll in the first few hours was estimated at 4,000, but the number eventually rose to around 15,000. Some believed the real count was even higher. Hospitals were overwhelmed, unable to treat the thousands suffering from gas exposure. But the disaster didn't end there. The gas caused long-term health issues, including lung diseases, neurological disorders, and birth defects. Even decades later, many in Bhopal continue to suffer from illnesses linked to the exposure. The plant was abandoned, but the damage remained. Toxic waste left behind contaminated the land and water supply. Studies later found that mercury levels were millions of times higher than safe limits. The drinking water used by thousands contained harmful chemicals, causing serious health problems, including cancer and brain damage. Despite the massive loss of life, accountability was difficult to achieve. Union Carbide India Limited, the American company that owned the plant, denied full responsibility. The company blamed a worker for sabotage, but many believed it was the result of cost-cutting and poor safety standards. During the disaster, Union Carbide Chief Executive Officer Warren Anderson was charged with negligence in India, briefly detained, and later left the country. Despite an arrest warrant, he remained in the United States without trial. In 2001, Dow Chemical acquired Union Carbide, but neither company took responsibility for cleaning the toxic site. For the survivors, the fight for justice never stopped. They demanded proper compensation, medical care, and environmental cleanup, but legal battles dragged on for years. Many felt abandoned, left to deal with the consequences alone. In 2024, a group of Bhopal survivors traveled to the United States to raise awareness about the ongoing impact. They spoke to lawmakers and activists, pushing for action against corporations that ignore safety. Their message was clear: such tragedies should never happen again. The Bhopal disaster was not just an accident, it was a result of negligence and greed. If the plant had been properly maintained, thousands of lives could have been saved. If safety measures had been followed, the gas leak might never have happened. But instead, ignored warnings and cost-cutting led to one of the worst industrial disasters in history. Even 40 years later, the people of Bhopal are still suffering. The land, water, and their bodies continue to bear the scars of the gas leak. Their fight for accountability is far from over. Could this tragedy have been prevented? Could the people of Bhopal have been spared decades of suffering? These questions remain unanswered. But one thing is certain: the consequences of corporate negligence can last for generations. For the people of Bhopal, the events of December 1984 are not just a story from the past. They are a reality they live with every day. It was June 28, 2013, in Yarnell, Arizona, when a wildfire broke out due to a lightning strike. What started as a small blaze quickly turned into one of the deadliest firefighter tragedies in the history of the United States, claiming the lives of 19 elite firefighters. The Granite Mountain Hotshots, an elite wildfire crew from the Prescott Fire Department, were deployed to protect Yarnell from advancing flames. By June 30th, The fire had surged from 300 to over 2,000 acres, driven by strong winds and dry conditions. The hotshots worked tirelessly, clearing brush and building fire lines, but the situation took a devastating turn. At 4:30 p.m. on June 30th, Eric Marsh, the crew's leader, made a distress call. His team was in a critical situation and preparing to deploy their last resort emergency shelters. These small, heat-resistant tents were designed to shield firefighters from extreme heat when escape was impossible. Marsh's voice remained calm as he radioed for help. A fire department spokesperson later recalled that it was the calmest he had ever heard him. The team knew they were in danger, but they stayed focused, trying to carry out their plan. The hotshots had positioned themselves on a ridge above Yarnell, working to protect a neighborhood called Glen Isla. They had made progress, clearing vegetation and setting up a fire break. But just as they were finishing their task, a sudden thunderstorm swept in, changing everything. The wind direction shifted without warning, pushing the fire toward them at alarming speed. Within moments, the escape route they had prepared was no longer an option. The fire moved rapidly, cutting off their way out and leaving them surrounded. Thick smoke filled the air, making it impossible to see. The firefighters scrambled to find a safe spot and deployed their emergency shelters, but the fire's intensity was overwhelming. With temperatures soaring above 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, the shelters couldn't provide enough protection. By 4:42 p.m., the fire had completely overtaken their position. When a helicopter finally arrived to assess the situation, it was too late. The 19 men had lost their lives before a rescue could reach them. The only survivor of the team, Brendan McDonough, had been assigned as a lookout at a separate location. His job was to monitor the fire's movement and warn the crew of any changes. When the wind suddenly shifted, he radioed the team, urging them to evacuate. He was then ordered to leave immediately for his safety. McDonough was later found by another firefighter crew, the Blue Ridge Hotshots, who were evacuating Yarnell residents and assisting with rescue efforts. Together, they moved the Hotshots' vehicles to safety, but by the time they could try to reach the others, the fire had already trapped them. The loss of the 19 hotshots devastated their families, colleagues, and the entire community. These men had risked their lives to protect others, and their deaths sent shockwaves across the nation. People from all over the country mourned their sacrifice. In Prescott, where many of the firefighters had lived, thousands attended a public memorial. Family members, friends, and fellow firefighters paid tribute to the fallen heroes. McDonough, the only survivor, stood before the grieving crowd, struggling with the weight of the tragedy. He would later dedicate his life to honoring his lost brothers. The Yarnell Hill fire remains one of the most significant disasters in modern firefighting history. It underscored the extreme risks firefighters face and the unpredictable nature of wildfires. This incident led to discussions on improving safety measures, communication systems, and training for future wildfire crews. The Granite Mountain Hotshots will always be remembered for their courage, dedication, and commitment to protecting lives and communities. Their story continues to inspire not just firefighters, but anyone who understands the true meaning of sacrifice. Their final moments raise difficult questions. What if the storm hadn't arrived? What if the fire hadn't changed direction so suddenly? Could the team have escaped in time? These are questions with no clear answers, but what remains undeniable is their bravery and the lasting impact of their service. It was September 29, 2023, in Missolonghi, Greece. Lumiana Anna Batsevani, a 50-year-old mother of two originally from Albania, was at work with her 18-year-old daughter cleaning a butcher shop. It was a typical day, as they often worked together to maintain the store. Batsevani had moved to Greece 2 years earlier, working hard to provide for her two children, including her 10-year-old son. She had been doing her best since separating from her husband, ensuring her children had everything they needed. But that day, a terrible accident would change their lives forever. As Batsevani cleaned the large industrial meat grinder, something unimaginable happened. Her long hair became caught in the moving parts. Before she could react, the machine began pulling her in. She screamed for help, but the shop was empty except for her daughter. Panicked, her daughter ran outside, screaming for help. A passerby, hearing the commotion, rushed into the shop, only to find a horrific scene. Batsevani was trapped in the machine, and there was nothing anyone could do. Emergency services, including police, paramedics, and firefighters, arrived within minutes. They worked tirelessly to free her, but the process took 9 grueling hours. Tragically, by the time they succeeded, she had not survived. As the rescue effort continued, Batsevani's daughter was taken to the hospital, overwhelmed by shock. Seeing such a devastating event unfold had left her traumatized. Though she was later discharged, the emotional wounds would take far longer to heal. Meanwhile, her 10-year-old brother now had to face life without his mother. The butcher shop was immediately closed, and the owner was arrested while authorities launched an investigation. Reports suggested the machine may have been activated accidentally, accidentally, but officials also looked into whether there had been any safety violations. Some speculated that Batsavani may have tried to free herself, only for her hand to get caught as well. News of Batsavani's passing shocked the local community. She was known as a kind and hard-working woman who had sacrificed so much for her children. Friends and family mourned her loss, with messages of grief pouring in on social media. Her funeral was held at the Holy Church of Agios Karalambos Evinochori in Etaloa, Karnania, where loved ones gathered to say goodbye. Sadly, accidents like this are not rare. In 2021, a similar incident occurred in Russia, and in 2019, a woman in Pennsylvania lost her life under almost identical circumstances. These tragedies show the dangers of working with industrial equipment when proper precautions aren't in place. But at the heart of this tragedy is a grieving daughter and son left without their mother. The trauma of witnessing such an event will never fully fade. Authorities continue to investigate what led to the accident. Was it truly an unfortunate mishap, or was there negligence involved? Were there safety measures that could have prevented this? Could the machine have been turned off during cleaning? The shop owner's arrest provided little comfort to Batsavani's children. No matter what the investigation finds, the damage is already done. A hard-working mother lost her life, and her children must now face the future without her. This devastating event serves as a reminder of the hidden dangers in many workplaces. Machines built for efficiency can quickly become dangerous, especially if safety protocols are not strictly followed. For Batsavani's children, the pain of losing their mother is something they will carry forever. No child should have to witness such a tragedy, and no worker should ever be put in a situation where their life is at risk. It was August 27, 2022, in Sydney, Australia. Aishwarya Venkatachalam, a 27-year-old senior auditor at Ernst & Young or EY, had moved from India to Australia to advance her career. She was known for her dedication and had gained a strong reputation in real estate auditing. That night, she attended a company function at a nightclub, but what followed was a heartbreaking turn of events. At around 12:20 a.m., Aishwarya fell from the 11th floor of EY's office building in Sydney's Central Business District, landing on a glass awning below. The incident left her colleagues and the public in shock. In the days leading up to this, Aishwarya had spoken to friends about the challenges she faced at work. The high-pressure environment had taken a toll on her, but no one expected what would happen next. The company function ended around 7:30 p.m., but Aishwarya stayed in the area. By midnight, she returned to the office. Witnesses later recalled seeing her outside a nearby parking area, visibly upset. 3 women approached to check on her. She told them she had left her house keys inside the office, but security refused to let her back in. With their help, she was able to re-enter the building. Minutes later, tragedy struck. Her sudden passing devastated her family, who struggled to comprehend how someone so hard-working and full of promise could be gone so suddenly. Her uncle, in particular, was heartbroken, describing her as intelligent, dedicated, and deeply loved. Following the incident, EY faced criticism over its demanding work culture. Many current and former employees came forward, sharing their experiences of long hours, workplace stress, and lack of support. Some also mentioned concerns about discrimination and unfair treatment. While there was no direct proof linking Aishwarya's passing to her job, the situation raised serious questions about high-pressure corporate environments. Employees described working grueling hours, often beyond the standard 40-hour workweek. Many felt exhausted and unsupported, especially newcomers who struggled to meet expectations. Some said working less than 10 hours a day was seen as a career risk, making long hours feel mandatory rather than optional. In response, EY's Oceania Chief Executive David LaRocca expressed deep sadness over Aishwarya's passing. He announced an independent review to assess the company's workplace culture and mental health policy. Though he stated there was no direct link between the workplace and the incident, he admitted that more focus was needed on employee well-being. During the investigation, LaRocca admitted that stress levels at the company needed to be addressed. While he avoided making definitive connections to Aishwarya's case, many employees saw her passing as a wake-up call. The review aimed to identify workplace challenges and improve support systems for employees. Colleagues continued to share their concerns, describing an intense work environment with tight deadlines and constant pressure. The expectation to maintain high billable hours left many employees drained. Some hesitated to speak up about their struggles, fearing professional consequences. Reports stated that in her final moments, Aishwarya was experiencing extreme distress. Witnesses mentioned she had been drinking, but she was not heavily intoxicated. The overwhelming emotion she felt that night, combined with the situation at the office, seemed to have pushed her to a breaking point. The people who tried to help her later expressed deep regret, wondering if more could have been done to support her. The police investigation ruled out any suspicious circumstances, but the broader conversation about workplace culture and mental health gained momentum. The tragedy forced EY to reassess its policies and address long-standing concerns. Aishwarya's family and friends were left to grieve the loss of someone they described as kind, ambitious, and full of potential. A heartfelt tribute from her relatives included a poem titled "Gone Too Soon," expressing the deep void left by her passing. Aishwarya's story raised difficult questions. Could more have been done to support her? Did workplace pressures contribute to her distress? And most importantly, how can similar situations be prevented in the future? In response, EY launched a full review of its workplace policy, including mental health resources, employee support programs, and security measures. Changes were made to improve safety at office buildings, such as redesigning rooftop terrace barriers to prevent similar incidents. Despite these actions, many still wonder if real change will come from Aishwarya's heartbreaking story. Her passing underscores the importance of mental health awareness, employee well-being, and the responsibility companies have in fostering a supportive work environment. While policies can be updated, the pain of her loss remains, leaving lingering questions about what could have been done differently. It was Friday evening, October 2nd, 2020, in São Luís, Brazil. 21-year-old Elande Oliveira Rodrigues has been working at the Mateus Atacarejo mixed supermarket for 3 months. She had recently started as a shelf stocker and was excited about her new job. She took a selfie in her blue uniform, smiling, unaware that it would be her last photo. The supermarket was busy, with customers moving through the aisles and employees restocking shelves. Around 8:15 p.m., disaster struck. One of the towering metal shelves suddenly collapsed, setting off a domino effect. The heavy metal structures, stacked high with goods, fell one after another. The crashing shelves sent shockwaves through the store as shoppers froze in fear. Chaos erupted as people scrambled to escape, but some were caught in the wreckage. Elaine was in one of the aisles when the shelves came down. Trapped beneath the debris, she was unable to get out. The scene was overwhelming. Food, household items, and twisted metal were everywhere. Screams filled the air as those injured called for help. The supermarket's security cameras captured the moment the shelves toppled, leaving little time for anyone to react. Witnesses later described the terrifying moments. Some managed to flee, while others were caught beneath the falling shelves. A man was seen carrying a small child away from the wreckage, while others frantically searched for loved ones. Those who escaped quickly tried to help, but the weight of the metal and products made it nearly impossible. Emergency responders arrived within minutes. Firefighters, paramedics, and police worked urgently to clear the wreckage and search for survivors. More than 270 rescue workers were involved in the massive effort. They carefully removed debris by hand and used tools to lift the heavy metal shelves. At times, rescuers called for silence, hoping to hear survivors tapping or calling out for help. The operation lasted over 11 hours. Rescuers worked tirelessly, carefully sifting through the wreckage. The air was thick with dust, and the supermarket remained in chaos as workers and bystanders anxiously waited for news. Tragically, by the following morning, Elaine's body was found beneath the debris. She was one of 2 people who lost their lives that night. 6 others, both customers and staff, suffered injuries, but were rescued and taken to the hospital. Thankfully, none of them had life-threatening wounds and were later released. Elaine's cousin, Ruan Allison, spoke to the media, recalling how happy she had been about her job. Her final moments captured in that last selfie showed her smiling, looking forward to her shift, completely unaware of the tragedy ahead. In the aftermath, the supermarket chain expressed deep regret over the incident and offered condolences to the victims' families. They announced an investigation into the cause of the collapse, as authorities suspected a forklift may have played a role. Reports suggested that the machine might have hit one of the shelves, triggering the disaster. However, officials continued their investigation to determine the exact cause. Meanwhile, the local community came together in an incredible display of unity. Footage from inside the store showed bystanders forming human chains, passing products from one person to another to clear the wreckage. One video shared online captured a rescuer expressing the importance of never losing faith in humanity. For Elaine's family, friends, and co-workers, the shock and grief were overwhelming. She had been a young woman full of dreams, with a promising future ahead. Her sudden loss was a painful reminder of how fragile life can be. The tragedy also raised serious concerns about workplace safety. Could this accident have been prevented? Were the shelves properly secured? Was the forklift operator following safety protocols? These questions remained unanswered, but they highlighted the importance of stricter safety measures in public spaces. Elaine's story became a heartbreaking reminder of the risks workers face in environments that may not always be as safe as they seem. The hope now is that lessons from this disaster will lead to better safety regulations, ensuring that no one else experiences a tragedy like this again.